My name is David, and before I start, let me tell you one thing. I thought I knew the woman I married. I thought love meant safety, loyalty. No matter how bad things got, she'd be the one thing in my life I could count on. But I've learned. The person sleeping beside you can sometimes become your worst enemy. And they'll smile at you while they're twisting the knife. I'm sitting here in the half-dark of my living room, the pale blue glow of the TV flickering across the floor. But I'm not really watching anything. I've got this tightness in my chest, like someone squeezing my ribs together. Outside, the wind rustles the leaves, and it's so goddamn quiet in here that my own pulse sounds like a war drum in my ears. I keep replaying the moment I stepped off the plane. Duffel bag slung over my shoulder, sand still clinging to the creases of my uniform. It was an early morning in Virginia, pale sun coming up over the runway. I remember the cold slap of the air after months in desert heat. I remember searching the crowd, scanning for her face, expecting her to come running, maybe crying a little, the way she had on all my other homecomings. But she wasn't there. That was the first crack. Even now, I can feel the sting of that moment, the sudden hollow drop in my gut. It's crazy how your entire world can tilt in one heartbeat. I should have known then, but you don't come back from deployment thinking your marriage has fallen apart behind your back. You come home clinging to the idea that what you left behind stayed exactly as you left it. The clock on the wall ticks louder than usual, though the smell of cold coffee drifts from the kitchen counter, stale and bitter. My palms are damp. I don't know exactly why I'm telling this now. Maybe it's because for months I've been carrying this secret. It's pretending everything's fine when it isn't. Or maybe it's because part of me still wants to scream in her face. It's to ask how she could do this to me. To us, but I won't scream. That's not my way instead. I'm going to tell you how I quietly turned the tables on the woman who tried to destroy me while I was gone. I met Clara in college. She had this laugh that rolled out of her like a soft wave, her hair always twisted up in a messy bun, a few strands falling in her eyes. She was funny, smart, and stubborn as hell. We were 20 when we met. Married by 24. When I enlisted, she told me she was proud of me. Said she'd hold things down while I was away. And for years she did. I sent her pictures from the base, from dusty convoy routes under burning skies. She sent me videos of our dog, of the house, of Christmas lights strung along our little white fence. We built our life slowly, brick by brick. A modest house on a quiet street, a Ford pickup in the driveway, friends over for cookouts in the summer, the smell of charcoal and burgers rising in the heat, nights curled up on the couch, watching bad TV, her feet tucked under my leg, and through it all, I thought we were solid. I thought we were the couple that would grow old together. Grumbling about politics and grocery prices and the dog's arthritis, never saw the cracks forming. Maybe if I'd paid closer attention, I'd have noticed the way her voice sounded. Sharper on video calls, or how she started avoiding talking about money, or how she'd changed the subject when I brought up wanting kids. But I was tired. Tired from deployments, from the weight of responsibility, from missing home. And I wanted to believe we were okay. I remember the scent of her perfume lingering. In the sheets, a warm floral note that used to make my chest ache with longing. The taste of her lips when I'd come home on leave, desperate and half wild. The way she'd bury her face against my shoulder, like she never wanted me to leave again. It makes me sick now, remembering how real it felt. Because the truth is, Clara did the unthinkable while I was gone. And when I found out, something inside me split open. But here's the thing about me, I'm not the kind of man who flips tables or smashes walls. I'm not loud, I'm not reckless. I'm a man who plans, who thinks, who can sit perfectly still and wait for the right moment. So I decided if she wanted a war, I'd fight it my way. Quietly, legally, and with a precision she never saw coming. There's a box on the coffee table in front of me, wrapped in brown paper. Inside it are the pieces of the life I thought I had. Documents, photos, emails, notes in her handwriting. Evidence of the secrets she kept. Proof of what she did while I was serving. My country half a world away? Sometimes I look at it and I feel like I'm staring at a corpse. The corpse of my marriage. Outside, a car passes by slowly, headlights sweeping across the blinds like searchlights. I close my eyes, trying to shove down the bitterness rising in my throat, because the part that hurts the most is that she thought I'd never find out, but I did. And now, I'm about to tell you how I uncovered the truth and how I made sure she'd never see me coming. I didn't go straight home when I landed. Something didn't feel right. I've always trusted my gut, especially after years in uniform, where your instincts can be the difference between life and death. I stood there at baggage claim with my duffel, watching families reunite, kids running into arms, tears and kisses and laughter all around me, and me. I just stood there, alone, a ghost drifting through a moment I was supposed to belong to. I ended, taking a cab to a buddy's place, Joe. We served together before he was discharged knee injury. He was the first person I ever told about the growing silence between Clara and me, the way she hadn't picked up my last few calls, the weird text replies. One-word answers, no photos. She'd been off. I remember saying. Joe just nodded. You ever think maybe she's hiding something? That question stuck in my head like a splinter. I spent the night on his couch, just listening to the city breathe cars in the distance. A siren now and then, the clink of pipes in the wall. I didn't sleep. I just laid there, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I was walking into. When I finally went back to the house the next morning, I didn't use my key. Something told me not to. I stood across the street first, just watching. The lawn was freshly mowed. The flower beds were full. She'd always hated gardening. There was a new car in the driveway, a white BMW, not hers, not mine. And then the front door opened. A man walked out tall, t-shirt, coffee mug in hand like he owned the damn place. He bent down and kissed someone in the doorway. Clara, I didn't even move. I just stood there, the sun warming the back of my neck, and watched my wife kiss another man in the doorway of the house we bought together. The house I still had a mortgage on. The house I thought I was coming home to. That's when the shock gave way to something else. Not rage, not even grief. Something colder, like a slow settling silence. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just turned and walked back to Joe's. I needed answers. But more than that, Ty needed control. You see, when I joined the Army, I learned how to detach, to observe, to wait. Emotion can cloud your vision, get you killed, and now, back home, I called on that same training. I didn't confront her, didn't even let her know I was back. Instead, I called a lawyer. That was the first step I found. Out a lot in the next 48 hours. And every new detail chipped away at the lie I'd been living in. Turns out, while I was deployed, Clara had filed paperwork, not for divorce, but for a quitclaim deed transfer. She'd forged my signature to remove me from the house title. She used a power of attorney I'd left with her years ago, meant only for emergencies, and manipulated it to take my name off everything. Then she refinanced the house in her name. A loan, that BMW in the driveway, bought with funds siphoned from our joint account, and the man I saw. He wasn't new. Their affair had started 6 months into my deployment. She'd been methodical, quiet, strategic. I realized, bitterly, that she had studied me, learned my habits, the way I trusted her implicitly. She'd weaponized that trust, planned the entire operation like a campaign. While I was dodging IEDs in another time zone, she was dismantling my life piece by piece. But here's where it gets interesting. The lawyer I hired wasn't just any lawyer. He was a veteran too. Knew the ins and outs of military legal protections. Knew how easily people like me get taken advantage of during deployments. And most importantly, he had a quiet fury about him. The kind that doesn't bark. The kind that bites later when it matters most. He laid it all out for me, how we'd build the case. How we'd document every forged signature. How we'd subpoena the bank records and challenge the misuse of the power of attorney. But he warned me, if you go in guns blazing, she'll lawyer up. She'll play victim. You'll lose control. So I didn't. I smiled. I stayed quiet. I watched. And then I started gathering everything. Emails, text logs, financial statements, old documents with my real signature, voice messages she didn't know I'd saved. I even had backup of our home security footage saved in the cloud footage she hadn't thought to erase. Footage of her with him. In our house, every piece of evidence was like another puzzle piece falling into place. And still, I didn't call her. She didn't know I was back. Didn't know I'd seen her. I didn't know the ground beneath her was about to crack wide open. The hardest part? Pretending I was okay. Pretending like the man I used to be hadn't just died on that sidewalk when I saw her kiss someone else. In our doorway, but I had to be patient. I had to move like her quiet and calculated, because if she wanted to play chess, she'd picked the wrong opponent, and I hadn't even made my first move. It's strange how your brain starts rifling through old memories once you know the truth, searching for moments you should have seen for what they really were in the days after I came back. While I stayed hidden at Joe's place, I kept replaying little scenes from the past few years. Things I'd shrugged off, or chalked up to stress, like the way Clara started wearing her hair different at first. It was just subtle looser curls, more makeup, brighter lipstick. I figured maybe she was trying to cheer herself up while I was gone. Deployment does things to people. Loneliness crawls into the cracks of your soul. But then there were the phone calls. Short, clipped. Sometimes. She'd pick up and then suddenly say, "Babe, I'll call you back. Someone's at the door," and never call me back. Or the time I called her on video chat and she was sitting in the car instead of inside the house. Said the Wi-Fi was down. Even the house looked different in the few glimpses I'd seen. New furniture, I didn't remember. Us buying a different rug in the living room. Curtains she'd once told me she hated now hanging across the backsliding doors. But at the time, I told myself, it's fine. People change things. We used to talk about our future, about kids, about growing old in that house. She'd trace little circles on my arm while we lay in bed, whispering baby names into the dark. Then about 8 months before I came home, she stopped mentioning it at all. And the last time we spoke before I came back, an awkward 15-minute video call, she kept glancing off screen like she was listening for something, or someone. Even her laugh sounded rehearsed. I should have trusted the knot in my stomach. But you want to know the worst part? It's the guilt. Because part of me kept thinking, maybe this is my fault. I'd been gone so many times, missed anniversaries, missed birthdays, missed Valentine's days, and every time I left, I could see the strain in her eyes. The way she hugged me a little too tightly at the airport. When you're a soldier, you're taught to sacrifice, to accept that parts of your life belong to something bigger. But nobody tells you how much of yourself you might lose along the way, or how easily someone you love can slip out of your life without you even realizing it. Joe tried to talk me out of blaming myself. He sat me down, cracked open a couple beers, and said, "Look, man, cheating's a choice. Stealing's a choice. Don't you dare carry her choices on your shoulders. But at 3 a.m, lying awake in the dark, your mind doesn't listen to logic. It just keeps looping every memory, every conversation, every tiny moment you might have missed." I kept remembering our last Christmas before my deployment. We were sitting by the fireplace, Clara wearing this soft gray sweater that smelled like vanilla. She'd been quiet that night, staring into the flames. I'd asked her what was wrong. She said, "I don't know who I am anymore." At the time, I thought it was just stress, but now I wonder if it was guilt, or maybe excitement for the new life she'd already started building behind my back. There's this particular memory I can't get rid of. It was a few weeks into my deployment. I'd called her during a rare lull in the middle of the night over. "There," she answered in bed, lights off, her face lit only by the phone screen. I'd said, "I miss you so much. It hurts." She just smiled and said, "I miss you too." But there was no weight in her voice. And for a second, her eyes flicked away from the camera, like she was looking at something or someone beside her. Back then, I told myself it was my imagination, that I was paranoid from stress and fatigue. Now I know better. But there's something else. Something that started nagging at me after my lawyer explained how deep her betrayal really went. See? Forging a quit-claim deed. That's not spur-of-a-moment cheating. That's premeditated, calculated. It takes time, paperwork, research. It takes a certain coldness to sit down and plan the legal theft of your spouse's home. And the more I thought about it, the more I started to suspect that Clara wasn't working alone, because she'd never been the type to handle legal documents or financial schemes. She hated paperwork. She got confused balancing a checkbook, so who helped her? The guy I saw kissing her in my doorway, or someone else entirely? That question became an itch I couldn't ignore, and the more I started digging, the more cracks began. Appearing in the story, Clara thought she'd buried, because what she didn't realize is that while I'd been fighting overseas, I'd learned how to read the battlefield, even when the war was happening in my own home. 2 days after I saw Clara kissing that man, I finally stood on my own front porch again. It was early morning. The street was still half asleep, bathed in soft summer haze, crickets droning in the bushes. I felt like a stranger on my own sidewalk. The neighborhood smelled like cut grass and car exhaust. I could see tiny spider webs glistening between the porch railings. My key still fit the lock. When the door swung open, I almost staggered from the wave of familiarity and betrayal that hit me all at once. The house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner, but underneath it, there was a scent I didn't recognize. Different cologne. Masculine. What? The furniture was all wrong. The furniture was all wrong. She'd replaced the sofa we'd picked out together in a discount showroom. After months of saving, new coffee table, new rug. Our wedding photos were gone from the walls. I felt like I'd walked into a model home perfectly arranged, but empty of any soul. A chill crept up my spine. I stepped into the kitchen, opened drawers at random, everything rearranged. New utensils, new dish towels, new glassware. It was like Clara had tried to scrub me out of the place entirely. My chest tightened until it hurt. My heart hammered so hard it drowned out every other sound. Then I found the mail. A stack of envelopes tucked under the fruit bowl. Mortgage statements addressed only to Clara. Bank notices with new account numbers. A water bill in her maiden name. And there, folded between the pages of a glossy furniture catalog, the quit-claim deed my signature forged so perfectly, it almost fooled me. Almost I stood there staring at that paper, the air vibrating in my ears, my fingertips trembling. It's my name erased from the only place I'd ever truly called home. That's when the cold part of my brain finally kicked in, the part of me that knew how to run covert ops, how to gather intel and plan an ambush without the enemy ever knowing it was coming. So I took pictures of everything, every document, every envelope, every forged page. I slipped them into a manila envelope I kept under my jacket. Then I put everything back exactly where I'd found it. I was about to leave when I saw something else, a framed photo on the hallway console. It was Clara and the man I'd seen, smiling, arms wrapped around each other on a beach somewhere. Her hair blowing in the wind, his hand on her hip. She looked free in a way I hadn't seen in years. I picked up the frame. My reflection glinted in the glass. My voice came out in a whisper. "Who are you, Clara?" I set the picture down, left the house as quietly as I'd entered. Outside, the sky was blazing into bright daylight, cicadas screeching in the trees. Back at Joe's, I showed the photos to my lawyer. He leaned over the table, glasses sliding. Down his nose, flipping through the images one by one. "Jesus," he murmured. "She wasn't just trying to take the house. She was erasing you." I stared at my own face in the reflection of the black TV screen across the room. My eyes looked older, harder. "She almost did," I said. He nodded. "But she made one mistake." I glanced at him. "What's that?" "She underestimated you." Over the next few days, I moved like a ghost. I didn't answer Clara's calls. Didn't respond to her messages. I let her think I was still overseas, tangled in military red tape. Meanwhile, my lawyer began drafting filings. Fraud, forgery, financial damages. We contacted the bank, freezing any further transactions on the house until the court could sort the mess. But the most important piece was the power of attorney. Turns out, the document Clara used had expired years before. She'd assumed no one would notice. The lawyer smiled grimly. That's the nail in her coffin. Still, something kept gnawing at me. The man in the photo. I ran a background check, and that's when I discovered he was a real estate agent. Not just any agent. Specialist in distressed properties and asset transfers. A man who'd filed multiple business licenses under different LLC names in Virginia and Maryland. A man connected to quiet legal disputes where spouses had claimed they were defrauded out of homes and assets. My skin went cold as I stared at the printout in my hand. Clara hadn't just been cheating, she'd been part of a bigger scheme, and the man she was sleeping with wasn't just her lover, he was her partner. In crime, I stared at the printout for so long that the letters started to blur together. My eyes burned, and my throat felt raw, like I'd swallowed broken glass. The man's name was Ethan Wells. On paper, he looked clean. Polished headshots in a suit. Entire 5-star reviews on real estate websites, smiling testimonials from happy couples holding sold, signs in front of houses. But if you dug deeper, and God knows I did, there was rot underneath the shine. Shell companies. Quitclaim deeds filed on properties whose owners were suddenly overseas. Civil lawsuits sealed by quiet settlements. Patterns that, if you knew how to read them, spelled out a roadmap of quiet theft. He'd done this before, and Clara, she was his perfect accomplice. Because who better to help target vulnerable soldiers than a military spouse who knew how deployments worked? Who knew how long a soldier might be unreachable, how fragile their marriages could become under distance and strain? My stomach twisted, nausea rolling through me. I remembered all the times I'd told Clara about my friends who were struggling guys whose marriages were barely hanging on. Guys who trusted their wives with everything back home while they fought. Halfway across the world, had Clara and Ethan used me as practice for something bigger, or was I just the latest in a long line of marks? Joe was sitting across from me, arms folded tight, jaw working side to side like he was chewing on the urge. To hit something, bro? You want me to handle him? He asked, voice low. I shook my head. No, that's what he'd expect. If we blow this up, he'll disappear. Change names. Start over. Joe glared. So what's the plan? I took a deep breath. I'm going to let them think they won. Joe frowned. Man, that's crazy. But it wasn't crazy. Not if you understood the psychology of people like Ethan. Predators. Parasites. They get sloppy when they think they've already won. So I kept playing the part. I let Clara's calls go to voicemail. When she finally left a tearful message, saying she was worried sick because she hadn't heard from me in weeks, I felt my lips curl into a bitter smile. My lawyer and I started collecting every shred of evidence. Not just against Clara, but against Ethan. Property records. Emails. Texts. I found screenshots of Ethan's name and metadata attached to scanned documents Clara had submitted to the bank. I found login records tracing back to his brokerage office, and the footage. God. The footage, hidden in the home security cloud storage, were clips of Ethan and Clara. Together in my house, at my kitchen table, on my couch, laughing, whispering, signing papers. It was like watching a movie, starring strangers wearing the faces of people I used to love. Late one night, I sat in the dark, laptop open, watching Clara's face as she leaned close to Ethan. Her voice came through the speakers, soft but clear. He's never going to know. He trusts me too much. I pressed pause. The image froze on Clara mid-smile, eyes shining, and for the first time since I came home, I let myself cry. Not loud. Racking sobs. Just silent tears sliding down my face. One after another. Because it wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that the life I'd believed in, the marriage I'd fought to protect, had been nothing more than a convenient disguise for her lies. But even as my vision blurred, something inside me hardened into steel. I wasn't just going to expose Clara. I was going to take down Ethan too. So I met with my lawyer again. This goes beyond divorce, I told him. Fraud, he nodded. We'll get the feds involved, but you have to be careful. If they catch wind that you're building a case, they'll vanish. I sat back in my chair, feeling the weight of every sleepless night pressing down on me. I can be patient, I said. I've waded through mortar fire and desert heat. I can wait for this. Over the next few weeks, I kept feeding my lawyer every piece of evidence, quietly, methodically. Clara still thought I was overseas. She and Ethan continued moving forward like they were in the clear. They listed my house for sale. Ethan posted the listing on his agency's site, calling it a fantastic investment property. He even scheduled open houses. That was their biggest mistake, because the minute they involved public records, they gave me the leverage I needed. One morning, I woke up to find an email in the dummy account I'd set up for tracking their activity. Anne. Automatic alert. New property transfer documents filed. My house. Under Ethan's LLC. They'd finally tried to sell it out from under me completely. And that was the moment I struck. The morning sunlight felt sharp, almost metallic, streaming through the blinds in Joe's spare bedroom as I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the email notification glowing on my phone. A property transfer, filed just after midnight. Clara and Ethan thought they'd done it, thought they'd finally stolen the house from under me for good. I felt calm, colder than I'd ever felt in my life. I forwarded the documents to my lawyer and then got dressed in a quiet, deliberate way, like gearing up for a mission. Clean jeans, button-down shirt, boots polished to a shine, because I was done hiding, too. Days later, Clara showed up at a title office downtown for the closing. Ethan was with her, his hair slicked back, wearing a tailored suit and that same shark grin I'd memorized from his headshots online. I know all this because I was already there. I sat in a chair in the corner of the waiting room, reading a magazine. Sunglasses on, hat pulled low. Just another guy waiting for his appointment. When Clara walked in, I saw her hand slip into Ethan's. She was wearing a pale pink dress, hair curled soft around her shoulders. She looked happy, relaxed. She never even glanced in my direction. I watched as they went up to the reception desk. I watched the way Clara giggled when Ethan whispered something in her ear. Then my lawyer appeared beside me, briefcase in hand. "You ready for this?" he murmured. I nodded. We followed them back into the closing room. The instant I stepped through the doorway, Clara froze. Her eyes widened like she'd seen a ghost. Ow. The color drained out of her face so fast it was like someone pulled a plug. "David," she breathed. Ethan spun around, confusion flickering across his face. "Who the hell?" I held up a folder. "Hi, Clara." "Hi, Ethan. Don't let me interrupt." Clara's lips parted, but no sound came out. The closing agent blinked between us, papers trembling slightly in her hands. Lawyer cleared his throat. His voice was cool and professional as he addressed the room. "There will be no sale today. This property was fraudulently transferred out of my client's name during a military deployment. We have filed motions with the court to invalidate the deed, freeze all proceeds, and pursue criminal charges for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy." Clara let out a strangled sound, a tiny gasp. Ethan barked. "This is bullshit. Get your lawyer out of here." But my lawyer interrupted smoothly. "Mr. Wells, your brokerage license is now under investigation. You're facing charges for conspiracy to commit wire fraud. The FBI has been briefed. They'll be in touch." Ethan's mouth snapped shut. Clara started shaking all over, her hands trembling as she clutched her purse to her chest. "David." "I can explain." I tilted my head slightly, studying her. "Really?" I said quietly. "Because I've got video footage, bank records, and every forged document you and your boyfriend ever signed. So why don't you explain it to the feds instead?" Her lips quivered. "Please, I was scared. I thought you'd never come home. Didn't mean for it to go this far." Her voice broke, and she tried to step closer to me. But I took a single step back. Ethan turned on her then, eyes flashing. "You told me he'd signed the papers? You told me he was out of the picture?" Clara flinched away from him, her whole body shaking. I thought he was. I thought he'd stay." Over there longer, my chest twisted watching them. Once I would have given my life for her. Now, all I felt was a dull ache. I was over there risking my life, I said. My voice was low, flat, steady. And you were over here selling it off piece by piece. Tears spilled down her cheeks. David, please. I love you, I felt. Something inside me finally snapped free. No, I said. You love yourself. And now, you're going to pay for what you did. The closing agent scurried out of the room as my lawyer began listing off the charges. Ethan was pale as chalk, sweat beading on his forehead. But Clara? Clara just stood there sobbing, mascara streaking down her face, shoulders crumpling inward, as if the air had been sucked out of her chest. I thought I could fix it before you found out. She whispered. I thought we'd have the money, that we'd start over. Start over with what? My house. My name, I said. You destroyed everything. And in that moment, the woman I'd married seemed to shrink in front of my eyes, folding in on herself like paper, burning to ash dot, because this wasn't just a marriage ending. This was her entire facade collapsing. They led Clara and Ethan out of the closing office separately. Ethan was still cursing, sputtering threats about lawsuits and defamation, but his voice was thin, desperate. He knew the game was over. Clara, she couldn't even look at me. As two uniformed officers escorted her away, her shoulders shook with silent sobs. The soft pink dress she wore seemed so small now, like a costume she'd outgrown. For a long time, I just stood there in that silent room, staring at the empty chairs and the stack of untouched closing documents. The closer had left her coffee cup behind on the table. The steam had gone cold. A thin skin of milk had formed over the surface. Funny the things your mind focuses on in moments like that. It wasn't triumph I felt. Not exactly, it was relief, and something like grief. Grief for the life I'd thought I was living. For the version of Clara I'd loved. For the man I used to be, the man who believed certain things could never happen to him. I stepped outside. Into the sun. The air smelled clean and sharp, tinged with distant traffic and the faint copper tang of summer heat off concrete. Joe was waiting for me on the sidewalk, leaning against his truck. He nodded once, not saying a word, just clapping a hand on my shoulder. I'd spent months drowning in secrecy, rage, and sorrow. Now, for the first time in a long while, I could breathe. I kept expecting to feel vindictive joy, but all I felt was tired. Clara and Ethan faced charges for fraud and conspiracy. The house once held in limbo was restored to my name. The bank reversed the refinancing. Ethan's brokerage license was suspended, pending federal investigation. But the house, I couldn't stay there. Every wall felt tainted. Every room whispered echoes of things I'd rather forget, so I put it on the market myself. A legitimate sale this time. And it felt strangely freeing watching strangers tour the rooms, talking about how they'd repaint the walls, where they'd put their furniture, they'd make it theirs. Because the truth is, I'd already let that place. Rented a small apartment overlooking a stretch of river. Nothing fancy. Just enough space for me and my dog. I started seeing a therapist. I started running again, at night. I sit on my little balcony with a cold beer, watching the lights ripple across the water, and I think about how close I came to losing myself completely. Sometimes, I wonder if Clara ever loved me at all, or if I was just the first stepping stone in a plan she thought would set her free. But mostly, I don't think about her anymore. I think about the man I've become, because betrayal will gut you. It'll leave scars you'll carry forever, but it can also carve you into someone stronger, someone who knows how to see the truth, even when it's hidden under the people you love most. And if there's one thing I've learned from this whole nightmare, it's this. Sometimes the quietest revenge is living well and never letting them steal another piece of you again.